Sometimes I wonder. I Hey, why don't we start? We got a new representative here from Iroquois. Do you want to introduce him? He's capable. You want to introduce yourself?
Jeremy Coleman's from Iroquois. I've been on the school board for 7 years. I was on this board 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Now back on it.
Awesome. Welcome. Well, thank you for
Thanks
coming.
for having me.
And then I think we're going to go right into a discussion with renovation change orders, correct?
Correct. We have visitors in force. So we turn the floor over to you guys. We're going to talk about our change orders. Last meeting, we tabled a change order for some electrical work in the last phase of the project. We were looking for more information, so we've asked them to come, and they're all looking for it. Chris, I turn it over to you and George. It's all yours.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us today. I have George McMillan, which most of you probably know from HF Labs. Sorry, Glenn.
Okay.
He's with me tonight as well. We have Tim Palmer from Perry Construction with us, Brian Doyle from Perry Construction, Scott Murdoch from Church and Murdoch with us, and then Dennis O'Brien's here as well. Matt had asked us to come in tonight to talk about change orders and the contingency. Right now, we're approximately 95% complete with the project. We've used approximately 38% of the contingency for change orders to date. We have approximately 62% in soft costs. Our contingency of $2 million, which was 6.75 of the overall project, was set aside for change orders and soft costs. This includes the building permit, civil engineering, geotech services, testing, clerk of the works, and miscellaneous construction expenses. Furniture and equipment, as you know, was separate. The contingency originally was set at 12.92% until the project came in over budget. At that time, it was cut in half from $3.8 million to $2 million. The national average on contingencies is somewhere between 8 and 10%. We were a little bit higher at 12.92 because of the unknowns we had. The average for A&E omissions as part of change orders is typically 3 to 5%. Now with that, I know you guys had questions in regards to Church of Murdoch's change order for the graphics area. And with that, I'll turn it over to George.
Thanks, Chris. And thanks everybody for having us this evening. I really do appreciate it. Several years ago, it's been a while since I've been in front of the JOC, but a number of years ago we spent quite many sessions talking about change orders and what might happen through the project. And I'm really very happy to report the status of the project tonight to you folks. So, being just about complete. I know from the last JOC meeting there were a couple questions regarding the electrical change orders. One in particular regarding the graphic cards change order and the amount of that change order. And in particular, a couple of questions. One, you already had a space and just making some changes, why did the cost increase so much electrically? So I'd like to address that first, and then second, Chris is passing out some change order information, tracking all that we like to use through the process of a project, and we'll go through an overview of that, but what's important on that sheet is to talk about the different classifications of the change orders, because a lot of people sometimes see change orders and don't quite understand why the change orders happen. So we like to break it out because we track it ourselves. It's very important for us to know that information. In regards to the first item with change order 60, working with the team, the folks from ECTS as well as the contractors, we were able to actually go back and have that number decreased, and Church and Murdoch provided us with a revised number based on some revisions that we made with the drawings, some things that were cut out of the space, some things that were combined, combining outlets and locations and things like that. We actually dropped the cost from, it was around 105,000 down to 55,000. I don't remember the exact number. Now you say, how can you cut that amount in a change order? Okay. I have to give credit to the team for working hard to do that. We worked close with Mike and his folks and Matt, some of the other folks. And basically what we did, in looking at, say, a wall of computers, rather than putting individual outlets at each of the computers, we combined them into, combined outlets into a single location. So we could actually minimize the labor, minimize the material cost. Now, there still is, it's still a significant change order at 55,000. Ask yourself, you know, why is there a change order since we had that space? The simple answer to that is the programming of that space and the thought process of that space when it was originally put together was different than what it is now. There were different players, different decision makers, things happening. So a lot of the data cabling, which is about $38,000 of that change order, was not included in the original project for various reasons at that time. So again, that's about 39,000 rates go of that portion of it. The remainder is lighting fixtures, miscellaneous power devices, things like that, fire alarm devices that had to be added for the spaces to be changed.
Specifically on the data lines, were they just, what, was it really that big of a change? Were they not on the drawing? What, I mean, that's a huge difference for.
It is a huge difference, and the thought process, to be honest with you, at that time was that a lot of the cabling, for various reasons, was going to be done by in-house staff for portions of that. Why, I don't remember why, but that was the thought process because of the nature of the labs, things that were happening in there. They were going to be utilizing data cabling and running data cabling as part of the program. That's what I know. Now with the revised layout, we went from the power poles, which I think everybody was familiar with the desks in the middle of the classrooms, to putting them around the perimeter, actually giving each student a hardwired connection rather than using wireless. So it was just a change in the thought process as we got closer. If you remember, a lot of that programming happened 2019, 2020, you know, and we're a couple of years on from that.
Is there a reason the school is choosing not to do a wireless choice? I mean, at the college, we have abandoned the hardwired connections for everything. All of our labs are wireless.
So all of our labs are wireless, Mike, if I have that correct.
All labs have wireless capabilities as well as wired capabilities. The labs that we're speaking about tonight, they are labs that do better when hardwired. So for example, computer programming, yes, can run on a laptop, can be ran wireless. The stipulation though is when you tax a bunch of people on that wireless, it's going to bombard it. So we have always done as a school hardwired for these certain labs that are computer heavy. All right, you look in a lot of the like other labs in the school, like our construction lab, they just have laptops and wireless like you're alluding to. But the labs that do a lot of day-to-day desktop hardwired work, we've hardwired. So that's that. A lot of that wing, our drafting and design lab also is hardwired for that same purpose because they're at a desk every day. We want them to have a reliable, dedicated connection. So classroom learning isn't interrupted by wireless peaks and valleys, if you will.
So we're only going hardwired in those 4 computer-based labs of computer networking, computer programming, graphics, and art design, because they're basically doing computer work every day, all day in those 4 labs. And then design and drafting got.
Drafting and design, because they're hardwired as well.
The school actually said that initially they were going to run their own cabling.
I wasn't around then, so
I wasn't hearing that. That seems really
That's what,
Suspect.
Yeah.
It's surprising.
that's what I said last month, and I realized you weren't here. That's the difficulty here. We've changed players, that have been dealing with it, just, you know, it's easy for me to wrap my head around some change orders that make some sense. When you get into stuff, the parking lot one, nobody knew what that sub-base was, totally. That's what change orders are for. On something like this, when we have hardware and part of the bid is to take it out, and it's not to put it back in, that makes me start to really scratch my head. You know, that looks like, and I wasn't in those meetings. I just
Understand.
remember our good friend from Mill Creek before Mike, you know, he beat the table a few times and says, we gotta check these drawings, You know, we would have listened a little harder to that, but, you know, it is what it is now, but it's very frustrating.
Sure. And I completely understand with all the conversations we had about change orders early on through the process, everybody was concerned. As we get into the next part of this, I think what you'll see is the project is doing very well, change order wise. When you start to break it down and look at the various change orders and the reason why, and the percentages as they relate to industry standards, you're well below. So we're very happy with that, especially we're about 95% complete. We have one more area to finish up. So the change order should really be, I won't say eliminated, but pretty close to that.
George, help me understand, make sure I'm reading this right. So I'm looking at it here and it says, you need 165 drops. There were 82 in the original drawing,
Correct.
85, 83 additional ones, right?
That's correct.
Change order says, goes through material costs and all of that. It also says that there's 300 man hours for a journeyman, right? Okay.
Correct.
So it's 300 more hours to put an additional 83 drops in?
Yes, and I don't want to speak for Scott, but what I will say is the original concept had all of the work being done to the power poles above the ceiling. Everything out in the open, able to work. With the change in configuration of the desks and things, now everything has to be dropped on the wall. Now you're running a lot more pipe and wired down wall locations. It's significantly more in labor, correct?
That's correct. So from our standpoint, when we're switching from power poles to roughing in the walls, it's not just individual data drops, it's not just, the Cat 6 determinations at the patch panel. It's all the roughing, all the boxes, all the conduit that we're pulling through. That's what kind of makes up, the whole package. It's not just the actual Cat 6 cable itself. So to look at it, and just to be clear, the 83 would be in addition to, what was already existing. So it's not part of, those costs were never included or part of the contract. Even when I look at, so when we're looking at it, we're saying 82 drops were included in the contract, but that doesn't necessarily include any of the roughing, the original drops, because those were supposed to be in power poles.
There's 8 rooms, or 7 rooms, I guess, because one's a lab and a room together. So it's 7 different rooms we're talking in this area as well. So when you talk 80 data drops, you start thinking, well, it's a lot, but over 7 rooms, that's, distributed out there.
And the way recommended to do this is the most cost-efficient way?
I believe
we
it is.
talked about dropping through the walls, but is there an opportunity for mounting the raceways at desk level where they would be obscured by the desks once they're placed?
We actually looked at that option, but the raceway, believe it or not, is more expensive to install. So that's how we ended up going into mobile.
There were a couple things. So we did look at wire mold. At one point was one of the things that we evaluated. That was actually part of like change order 1. That we presented or that you guys looked at in the last meeting. Part of what we've done here is even with the power, we've gotten more efficient. We switched to MC cable versus having to rough in every individual outlet. So now we're able to jump from one receptacle to another behind the walls without having to do the additional roughing. What George was talking about as far as condensing the number of drops altogether, we're bringing the data cable down in groups of 4, groups of 5, and groups of 6, so that we're not having to rough in an individual receptacle for every one of those. So the change order that we're presenting now is much more efficient than what we had in the original drawings and what we presented as part of change order 1.
I just keep going back to how was it missed? How, this big of a change, or how was it missed? And I don't blame the contractors whatsoever. They did probably what they were presented. It's just a massive change in my eyes. I mean, and it's not the first big change. Earlier in the project, we had the big change order to go up and fireproof the wood rafters or whatever it was. And if I remember right, that was 80 grand of changes. It just seems like, how could these big ticket items be missed at bid? And that's what concerns me as a taxpayer. That's whose money we're spending is taxpayers' money. And I just think we need to justify it.
Why don't you guys go through how you guys classify all the different
Sure.
divisions?
Sure.
And then that will help kind of put us perspective on all the change orders that you have here.
So the handouts that you have in front of you right now, there should be 3 spreadsheets. One for the electrical change orders, one for the general construction change orders, and one for the HVAC change orders. To date, we have not received any plumbing change orders on the project. That's not saying that there won't be any. However, we don't have any at this time, so we have nothing to report. So if you look at the electrical change order list, you'll see in the center of the page a section called classification. As we go through each individual change order throughout a project, we classify them with different categories to keep track of. In this case, we have 6 different categories. First being phasing, and phasing is due to changes in the phasing plan after the project was bid. And those changes were needed for a couple different reasons. One, because of material delays, and 2, because of just the time frame it took to get the contractors on board and everything. It took a little extra time, which threw the phasing out, and for the contractors to keep going, they had to make some changes. As the changes were made, there were temporary provisions that needed to be made to keep certain areas up in operation. So you'll see a number of those as you go down through classified as phasing items. Second column, owner requested items, simply being items that are requested throughout the project by the owner to be added or changed. Field conditions, unknown field conditions, which is very small under the electrical portion, which really surprises me based on the fact that we tore this entire building apart. The field conditions are unknown conditions. You open up an existing wall, you find things that may not have shown up on the drawings. That's where they get classified. The next 2 columns, AE omissions and errors. I'm very proud to say that there are no errors on this project under any of the trades. So errors are classified as items that were incorrectly specified, installed, you paid for, and then they had to be taken back out and replaced with something else. We have 0 across all the contracts on this. Omissions are items that were omitted from the drawings but necessary to complete the project. Now, nobody expects anybody to be perfect. There are omissions on a project, every project, and we talked about them several years ago. We always try to keep those omissions, as small as we can, and I think we did a very good job on this project as well. As I think Chris mentioned, omissions are usually 3 to 5% on a job. If you look at the omissions from the various contracts, I think we're under 1% on most, if not all the contracts. So we're doing very well. Then the last column on the page are contractor coordination items. Now, these are items that you did not pay for. You did not pay for in a change order. But in this case, electrically, Church and Murdoch was due a change order because another contract changed something. That's covered by them. In this case, the mechanical contractor had to pay Church and Murdoch for their services. So we track them, but you're not paying for them. With that said, if you look at the percentages down at the bottom, under each column, you have phasing at 0.7%, 0.74%. Owner changes, which includes the $55,000 change order that we were just talking about. I've already included that in the number. Field conditions around $5,000. Omissions, $43,000, and then contractor coordination at $32,000. So you can see overall, as Chris mentioned before, the percentage of change orders for this project total, with all the owner changes and everything that we've come across in the field, you're still only at 2.56% in change orders. Where on a renovation project, you typically budget 8 to 10%, the industry standard. Now, I know that was a general overview. If anybody has any questions, Chris is going to talk a little bit about the general, but we can always come back to the electrical if need be. Chris?
George stole most of my thunder. But if you go to the second page for the general construction, I did bring a magnifying glass if anybody needs one, because I know I need one to be able to read this. Phasing, we did not have any changes. As you know, when the project started, it was more electrical than anything, where we had to get power from. Owner requested changes were $277,000 at 1.76%. Field conditions at $338,000 or 2.14%. A&E emissions at $123,000 at 0.78%. But then we had approximately 3% in credits, thank you to Perry Construction, of almost $472,000. And then HVAC is on the last page, and we had very few change orders for HVAC. Owner requested $12,000, 0.20%. Field conditions, $10,000 or 0.16%. A&E emissions, $6,000 or 0.10%. So as George mentioned earlier, we're doing quite well compared to the national average of 8 to 10% for contingency and only 3 to 5% for A&E emissions, which total for our job, as George mentioned earlier, is 2.56. Any questions?
Jessica, what's left? I'll bottom line this for everybody. What's left in contingency that we have?
In contingency, we have like 500 and something, let me look, I have that here.
Chris, you probably have that too.
In your, in board docs,
560.
under item 12, number N, is the renovation report. If you could pull that out, Michael.
Yep.
Go to page 9. That's kind of our master copy of what we're at with our contingency fund. At the top is the change orders for with the contractors until you hit that first bolded line. And then that middle and lower section on the left is all those soft costs. So if you scroll to the bottom, Michael, then we can get the kind of total. We're at 1.2 spent of 2 million. They mentioned that we do not have a single change order from our plumbing contractor, Scobell. They've gone through a change of personnel and so forth. We added bathrooms, that whole new wing that weren't in the original plans. They've done several other things with the kitchen. There's probably a couple $100,000 sitting out there of change orders from Scobell. Just so everyone's aware, we have yet to get one in 2.5 years of the project, a change order from Scobell. And they've done the work. So that's a odd scenario there. What's the statute of limitations on work done 2 years ago on a change order?
Contracts continue.
What's that?
I said the contract is still continuing.
Yes, really, we had that discussion at our meeting this week to try to enlighten me of when we're substantially complete in January, and we don't have any change orders from them, at what point do?
We'll send a thank you note.
No, yeah.
Like
It's a
the way you
great
think,
way to
Sam.
put it.
Maybe a gift card.
So when we had that Cosmo discussion and new programming discussion, that's where we're at. We got 700 and some odd thousands left in contingency fund. We have change orders that are coming in daily on this last phase of the project. Obviously, we have a $55,000 one sitting out there. And you do not have the $55,000 in this one, am I correct there, Jess?
I do have it in there,
Okay.
I have, as it hasn't been approved yet, so it's under projected. It's
Gotcha.
not on the actual, it is under projected.
So then it is in that total of
It's in there
1.213.
So you want it, you need to add 150-ish as a potential for the plumbing under the projector, is what you're saying. Just as a thumb.
I mean,
As
they
a
have yet to give us,
placeholder- As a placeholder,
yeah, I mean, it's,
So we're gonna be around that 500.
which is what, Chris, you said around 500, you think is probably right.
Correct.
When it's all said. And we have 4 months left to go.
January 20th, if everything goes right, depending on what happens tonight with the change order. Because I think we're 2 to 3 weeks behind right now, just because of waiting for this, for Scott to do his work.
For that, yeah, for that.
But we're this close to the end, we're very, very close.
Basically, everything's opened up now for the most part. So
Yes,
things
everything's
that we
opened
didn't
up.
know because it wasn't open, should be.
I would double check with Tim, but Tim, I don't think we have anything left open now.
I don't wanna say that for sure.
Look,
Yeah.
well, in general, we don't have other
In general,
areas.
no.
I've got another question, just tell me what the other, there's the change order on our agenda, and then there's the 5% to 2.5% or something like that for Perry, what does that mean?
What that means is, when you get halfway through the project, they're allowed to reduce their retainage from 10% to 5%. When we get down to their last couple of final pay apps, they can reduce it to 2.5, because we don't need to hold as much money on the table at that point. Because the majority of the work is completed, because that's why you're holding that.
So that request is just because we're at the point of work.
Correct. And sometimes people ask for it, sometimes they don't. On a job this size, I would ask for it.
And it's gone longer.
Correct. So that's what the request was for. Scobell hasn't asked for that yet.
And there's still those protections, Sam, there's still bonds on contractors as well, so there's 2 layers of insulation between contractors completing the job and us as well. So there's that as well, right?
Any other questions with any of these guys?
Just moving mostly from that, seeing as most of the change orders are self-initiated, are we
That's-
done?
that's an interesting, whole nother debate.
Oh, I'm just gonna give them the.
We're gonna,
At face value,
if
they
we're
were
gonna
all
talk
our
about
requests.
what's in the column of owner request and how they classify owner request versus us, that's a whole nother debate,
I will agree with you on
you know.
that, that's.
And Chris and I mean, this is the debate we had, I said, you look at 124, down there on electrical, it's 124,000 because the electrical drawings didn't match some other drawings. And we added power and alarms to the building. That's like, I don't know, how many, 100 door swipes to doors,
Yeah.
right?
I'm sure that that's.
So that's under owner request, and Is that an owner request? Our electrical drawing didn't match, what were the other drawings that were at, Scott? Door hardware drawings, so, again, I'm just,
That's a tough deal.
this is the classification by Lens and, HLRC, so.
I will agree with you that it's through the lens you look at it, the way you classify it.
The only,
Knowing that, what do we think, what is gonna be asked at this point, knowing there's 5% of the project left to go from the school itself? Are there any more asks internally?
You're coming from staff?
From staff, from us. Now, there may be other things that will fall into this category that we don't agree with, that we'll find, but is there any more asks from us?
From the school? No, I mean, we've been pretty smooth operating in the last couple months. Contractors have done a great job, you know. In this last phase, in our December meeting, I was planning on giving a tour and showing everybody, you know, that change order for the electric. I don't know what has been shared at the board level about the IT plan. There wasn't a huge look at the IT plan in the original project, is what I'm understanding, and that's where we're taking $750,000 out of furniture and equipment for IT upgrades, and that's then part of that, right? That's that power and that data and all that goes with the IT upgrades. That's all part of it, because there wasn't an IT plan, well articulated IT plan, I should say, in the original project.
If you only have 5% of the work left to do, isn't it unlikely there's a very high chance of sudden surprises or discoveries that just become less and less as you come closer to the end?
I would love to tell you that, Dr. Wise, but I unfortunately, Harbor Creek, we got to the end of the job and we found something. So things do happen, unfortunately. They
I'm a
do.
curriculum man, I'm not a construction man, so you gotta make it clear.
Things do happen, but we are this close and there shouldn't be.
I was at a committee meeting for the electrical lab, they said they need more electrical drops, is that been addressed too? There we go. She was complaining, Nicole was complaining that, okay, I didn't know if that was in there.
That's not in here.
Okay, but.
They're an electrical lab. I told Nicole, Mrs. Zanheiser, I knew was a journeyman for 20 years. I said, we need electrical drops in the electrical lab. We will get you the supplies. You make it happen. And those supplies will be charged to the project. But she and her group are going to do all those drops.
That's good. It was an interesting meeting we had.
So there's a lot of situations that are
Right.
like that,
Okay,
that we're gonna run into.
That's what he was actually discussing, when he mentioned that, which I thought could be relatively correct. He thought the school was going to use stuff, so now you're.
There are some projects that I'm looking for our labs to take over and run that are missing out of this project that we're gonna do. I mean, that's what they're here for, right? So there's no sidewalk from that entrance to the building that runs to Hammett Road there. There's no sidewalk from, you gotta have a sidewalk to nowhere, right? Because that's code. So we're missing that from the project, and we're gonna have our kids build a sidewalk through there. They already do pouring cement and sidewalks.
I understand it.
There's a series of those. They're all minor things, but, and we're still not punched out completely on half of these labs. Almost all of them, I think, at this point, that still have things on the punch list to get done and back through. So when you sit there and say there is more work to be done, there is more work to be done. There will be added costs. There's change orders coming in daily. Some of them are small, $3,000 to $5,000. Hopefully, we're not going to run into another, $30,000 to $50,000 to $70,000.
That's good. I figured this was gonna happen because it's a remodel, and remodeling are always tougher, especially like you said, we found a wooden studs and wooden supports in the section which how the heck they get in there.
Yeah.
That was really strange.
And with Scoville, I mean, that's one of the ones that has me a little nervous of what's gonna come in there. Because there was, you know, I mean, there was no bathrooms in that wing that they're finishing up, and that was an add. So when you're running all new bathrooms and plumbing and that kind of stuff, that's gonna be not a small change order.
Wasn't that all quoted though, wasn't it?
It wasn't in the original drawings. So
No, I mean, when the change order came to us, because we had to vote on that, I remember when we
that
voted
one
on
was
it.
voted on?
Joe brought us an estimate on what it was gonna be,
Yeah.
how much that
It was
came
just,
from.
it was just the scope of work is what I recall. It was part of that change. I don't know if we actually had hard numbers from everybody.
Yeah, I don't think they were hard, but I think we had some kind of estimate.
I think, yeah, so I think he was carrying a plumbing value.
But it seems like that's when the fence that was around the property disappeared. There was gonna be some credits
That he
that
thought was
came in
covered.
from some other things that were
Yeah.
kind of.
And those are on there with parent.
Right.
I mean, the fencing's gone, the sub-base study stuff's gone and so forth, so.
I'll put on my contractor hat, and I may try not to sound like a contractor apologist to the group. But go ahead, I have permission, Dr. Quinn, thank you. If the drawings were perfect, if they were 100% perfect, and there was no owner request, there was no field conditions, there was all this, the values that we're seeing here would have been reflected in the bids that would have been received. Therefore, the added value of the additional scope that are listed on these three sheets theoretically would have been included in the bid package. And so the costs that were added here would have been included then. And so by getting, the work that has been shown here is it's additional work. I mean, for all intents and purposes, even the A&E emissions were items that were not included in the original values.
Correct.
So therefore, we are getting due value for the work that was done. And so we can't disparage the contractors in that regard. What is obviously frustrating to all of us, I'm sure, is because the time is one. I mean, so that's a raw nerve for all of us that the job has taken 6 months, 8 months extra. And so therefore, these items then become that much more magnified, and I think in all of our eyes. I also think then that, but given that the original program was, as you indicated, 6% contingency on a roughly $30 million job, is not out of line. And I don't think I even still think that's a little conservative, frankly.
We used to get yelled at by PDE because it was so low. They wanted it higher.
Yeah, fair.
PDE wants to pay the bill, we'll give them whatever they want.
True. If they pay
But I'm just
anything,
saying, and to Dennis' point, in a renovation, there's always more than in a brand new building. Contingency is, whenever we're budgeting anything, new buildings are completely different than a renovation. They just are. And so the values that were included, I frankly, we should be happy that it was conservatively put together that way versus 6 months ago, we ran out of contingency. And we still have to finish 8 months left of the job. So on that regard, now, granted, we would all want to spend absolutely less. So now I'm going to take my contractor hat off and put my taxpayer hat back on. So we just need to limit anything else that's coming through. And I appreciate the process that Church of Murdoch and Chris and you did as a team to revisit that large change order. Because taking the time to find those efficiencies are what we need more of. And we need more of those processes to go through. And I know we had a transition with the clerk of works. I know we had transitions with leadership. I know we had a lot of those things. And we were just trying to get done in the summer. And so a lot of those things just happen. Just get it done, get it done, get it done. And so I think now is our time to really just scrutinize those at the end, and so that we close this out. I'll put my contractor hat back on. What you don't see in this list, am I done? I work for the taxpayers of Plattsburgh. Good answer, right? There's things on this list that happen that contractors just take care of that we don't see. That they are doing, whether it's a cost item or whether it's not a cost item, that does not show up here. So the goodwill that is earned by contractors, vice versa with the owner, et cetera, I think, goes a long ways as well. So that's just reality of any contractor. And I'm not asking, we're not asking for sympathy or any of those other things, but at the same time, I think, again, I'll go back to my original comment. The work that is shown is added scope, is added product and value, and therefore is, makes sense to me. So, take all my hats off.
I appreciate the comments. I think, I agree. I think there were some things that, hindsight's 20/20.
Sure.
And it would have been great to catch ahead of time. Overall, from where we were from 3 years ago, I think we've got something that we can be proud of. I appreciate the contractors working with the students and the staff and the building and all of that. I know it was a little hairy just before school started and for a couple of weeks after, especially for our staff, but everybody pulled together and I appreciate it. And for the next 20 or 30 years, we've got something I think we can be proud of here. And if we would have done it 10 years ago, like some of us wanted to do, it would have been a lot cheaper and we would have definitely been done by now. At any rate, it is what it is.
Well, these matter faces to look at. Well, we know names on construction side, and they're here making the dark things plain. It is as it is. They're expanding immensely complex notions, most of which I don't understand. And it's clarification. I don't think it's making accusations at all. We know their companies. They've done things for all of our districts, and they have good reputations. And Chris has designed most of the schools in this part of the state anyway.
So I've reported my home school every month in my report. It's been a challenge, but it's coming along. And we're going to get there. It's good. So I appreciate you guys coming in though tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Good to have you. Take your ties off and back to work.
Thank you.
I can do that? Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you. I can't tell you enough how well the contractors plug your ears, Steve. Everybody's been fantastic.
Are we ranking people now?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
See you guys.
Thank you. All right,
Yep. Where you want to go?
just run through the agenda real quick for our work session. If there's any questions on anything, feel free to stop me. We continue to hire and try to interview and hire and try to interview. I think we are going to be there finally with an auto tech teacher. Rob Rumbaugh is on the,
We're going to executive, right?
no,
No?
no.
Okay.
It's public knowledge, right? Motion to hire the guy.
What? Yeah.
Is our candidate that we're recommending for auto tech. And then we also have our other candidate for,
Eric Montjoy.
yes, Eric Mountjoy for computer networking. We're still hiring for our transition center teacher. So those are on there. And a couple highlights, events, open house, NHS, Walk for Wishes. We've already covered the Perry construction, retention release, and the change order. We have the EC3 lease agreement addendum. EC3 is teaching a class in our precision machining for uniquely able students. That's currently going on, and that's the lease agreement that we approved last month. That's the addendum to add that program to what's going on with the programs that they're doing here.
Can you pull that up for a second?
I
Because I guess I'm not, when I looked at it, I'm not totally clear.
yeah, I mean,
Is this an additional price? Or is this,
Additional price.
so what we approved last month plus this is what they're gonna
This, yeah, this is an amendment, so so the way we did that lease agreement, the way we're gonna do it moving forward is they're leasing the skills center space, right?
Right.
And then any other time they wanna use our building for a program, then we're gonna go into an addendum, or amendment, excuse me, I'm gonna keep on saying addendum. And then there's an additional price. So this is an additional price that's gonna be billed to them for use of the precision meat sheeting lab. And part of this cost is also the instructor.
Okay, yeah,
The
that's
instructor's
broke
being
down,
paid
down,
through us
down further.
versus being paid through them. So when you look at that, $3,370 per month over 12 months, that is the total payment for the leased premises of $10,800, as well as the instructor.
Gotcha.
And that's how they want to do it.
I didn't see anything in there on time of day.
So they run in the evening, 4 hours a day, 96 days. It's an evening program. And that's, if you scroll down to the detail and a little bit lower, up, right there, that paragraph. It's based on, they're running like a college semester class in the evenings here.
Okay.
So,
I see the 4.75 hours per day, but there's nothing about when.
Yeah.
I think we want something in there about, this will never happen during our school day? It will
no, this
happen.
is evening class. This is an evening class.
So
It'll
I
never happen
think
during.
it needs to say that.
We could add that. I don't think it's gonna need to say that though, but I mean, I think it's, we have the option of saying no to them at any time, but. you know,
Do we?
We do. I mean, we go into the agreement, there's a timeline in there to cancel it. But they're running an evening class in our precision machine lab from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So that's the 4 hours, and then the extra time is the planning time for the teacher. That's where the 4 hours thing.
I'm fine with that, I understand that, I've no
I
problem.
like that Sam says, it was really, I said, when is this operating? I wasn't aware of.
You just want to codify the time.
Yeah, I don't even care about times if it's just it's not operating during our school day.
Because we have evening classes here.
You're right, as I get older, I get more,
Nervous.
yeah, okay, risk averse, I think is the word I like to say. It's just more like, if we sign this and give it to them, there's nothing in there, they can come back and say, this is our agreement, and we want to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Sam's word is paranoid.
Is it paranoid? Okay, I'll say I'm paranoid.
We don't want
That's
change
fine.
order on that.
That's all I'm concerned about. And I understand you can say, well, not, but if they have an agreement to come in 4.75 hours a day and no other restrictions, I'm not thinking they ever would, it'd be nice to have it there.
And we have an opportunity if they want to do a summer school with us, but you don't know what they're exactly.
Well, this is by how many days and all that. Again, that doesn't, it's more of just the 96 days a year, so.
Is it a problem?
I'm going to make a,
I didn't draft this document, so I have no
You're a
idea.
solicitor, right? You're
Yeah,
the person
but,
that does.
I mean, you could,
It would be a problem.
I don't see a problem, you could add that. I mean,
So-
I would clean up this document, it's not a very well-written document, personally. I don't know who drafted it.
With a caveat.
I do.
We can prove it with a.
I'm sorry, I have to tell you, it's
Okay.
not a very well-written
Okay.
legal document.
So,
Alright.
And maybe you should consult me before you put it forward.
Okay.
so we could have to put on.
But I don't have an issue with the overall feeling of it, just, that's the one specific thing I think we ought to have something.
So do we want to, the rate is based off using the facility for 96 evenings and make that change and vote to approve it today? Or would you rather us redraft it?
To be clear, in that caveat, it says, blah, 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 blah. That's what this page do. We can approve it, with the caveat that Jim's gonna put in the part about the time, and we know it's good. I think I tend to agree with Matt, I don't think it's a worrisome factor, but if you don't.
Why don't we table that till our next meeting and we'll have it.
You can approve it subject to, why don't you approve it subject to the changes as authorized by the executive director of the solicitor?
Right, that sounds.
You fix it and show it to Matt, and we're happy.
Yes, yeah, I'm fine with that. That was my only concern, is they just, I think we've met with, what's his name, Jim Gray? President Chris. I think he's a reasonable guy, but leaders can change, and all of a sudden you get a different leader, and all of a sudden, hey, we've got this agreement. We want to do this, or, well, it just protects everybody, I think.
Did you go over 10C and D? Did you go over that real quick? If that was personnel, did we talk about that stuff?
We have not gotten there yet. We were on 9D.
Okay, sorry.
We have on there the approval of moving forward with a new program, Emergency and Protective Services. We're choosing to just do one new program at this point. We're meeting with the superintendents, and there's still discussion about what the second program should be. So that's on there as 9F.
I will say, Matt, that when I reported that back in our home district, they were excited about that program. I will say that as a group, as our board was.
Is that the superintendent's meeting, are they, because what we did is we stopped moving forward with the other Cosmo lab,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot in terms of the program before you tonight, but I think there's still some discussions to be had about the second program. Yes, Cosmo's been put on hold. It hasn't been, totally dismissed at this point, but as you can see, some of the presentations with contingency funds and so forth.
Sure. At the PAC meeting, the consensus of the superintendents were to put it on hold. Was that?
There was a very split
What was the split?
on whether to move forward with it or not move forward with it. There were several superintendents that thought we were moving and it was done deal and we were going. The way I understood it when my first meeting here in April was when we approved that, we were approving getting numbers, hard numbers.
The numbers
We
came
were
in
not
higher,
approving moving that.
numbers came in higher, and our contingencies went down, so it kind of answered to a financial perspective, but I think as Matt looked at that with the rest of the admin staff last month, for those that weren't here, we had a nice presentation by the admin, kind of sharing their thoughts on the whole thing, and I think that helps, and they shared that with the superintendents too, right? So.
Was the PAC split on putting the brakes on Cosmo because of the costs?
I think the split is derivative of the fact that I'm not sure, even though Tim did a good job explaining the conditions of the board motions, or the information went back to the boards as being to go out to look to see what the prices were, and if they were right, we would make further decisions. I think some people thought that we were moving forward with that project no matter what. I don't know how that happened. I feel kind of myself partially responsible for that, because I thought we articulated all that, and apparently we did not. The other thing is that I think there's a lot of discussion, which I think was refuted through the data that Matt presented, in terms of we have a lot of male-heavy programs here, and I don't think that that's completely accurate. I think that there is quite a blended model given the programs that we offer here in terms of the balance between gender in this building. So I think there was some misunderstandings of what actually was here versus what the perception might have been, if that makes sense to you guys. Is that accurate, Matt? It is. Our current enrollment was right around 40% female and 6% male. We went through all that data with them.
But the gist is the consensus from the superintendents was this path, is what you're saying.
So this path is, we can do whether we do Cosmo or don't do Cosmo.
Okay.
And this path is, we have two new spaces, and if we end up doing Cosmo, then both spaces get taken up, but we have space in the skills center. Right, so we could put a program part of the skills center over there moving forward. So we were ready to move on this path, and we could still do Cosmo too, if that ends up being the consensus as we move down and have further discussions, or we could go a different route as well.
Sorry, when we talked to the superintendents survey their home districts as far as the students and what they wanted to do? And are we looking at any data to not only what the kids want for the future, but what tech is going to look like in the next 10, 15 years and what we should use those rooms for? versus just expanding what we currently have.
So that was our presentation last month, was talking about how we vet out and make decisions on what data we look at, what perspectives and information we collected from different students over time. And that was mostly collected before I was even here. But that's what our admin team presented on. So what I'll do is I'll share that presentation with you, and then we can discuss, you know, kind of how it came to. Emergency Protective Services was one that was approved to be expanded and added in 2020. And then it never got added, basically just because the renovation put it on hold and so forth. So that's why, in COVID, there was something else there in 2020.
Yeah.
So that's why we felt comfortable that we had a lot of good support, student interest, support, and need in the community with the workforce to add that program.
The hard part is you look at a lab like that, there's a big waiting list for cosmetology. But if we added that tomorrow and said, come on, there's 11 of us, each of us are gonna be able to send 4 people into that lab for 3 years. Okay, so then we get 8. So even in a perfect world, it doesn't even take care of the waiting list per se, because you're gonna get 4 and you might not get any, depending on who you have already, you might not get anybody for a year or 2. You know, so that's the tough part is this with 2 extra rooms, or potentially 3 if you did that, you're gonna get 4 in each lab. So in essence, we can grow numbers better and probably have, I think your other point, your other question was about the type of program, you know, have some more diversity in the program.
Do you know the percentage of your current cosmetology students when they graduate that are actually going into cosmetology versus going into the critical?
That was all part of that presentation. I hate to beat a dead horse, but yeah.
It's low.
Why don't you and I connect, and I'll share that presentation with you. I have your email from the email Shane had, and then you and I can have a discussion on that overall. We just looked at last year's graduates with some of that data. I mean, there's more data than mine out everywhere, you know, you look. You go back 3 years, 5 years, so forth. But we felt with the presentation last week, we had a pretty good grasp on where we were and the rationale of why we were saying not to do a second Cosmo as a recommendation as an admin team, and why we were saying, hey, we want to look at some different options. But I'll get that presentation to you, and then we'll discuss it. Sound good?
Perfect. Yep, thank you.
And as Matt discussed, we did have, how many times during our meetings, we had the cosmetology and the staff here thought that they felt it was one of our best moves. So that's the reason I think this is a better direction, because even the staff here said that they thought we could use this area in a better way than cosmetology. They felt that there's a lot more need than local. And the 2 courses we picked, which you missed, which I thought was a pre-veterinary class and a safety one. And I thought they both were challenging classes, and they would be well accepted in our local area, because that's more opportunity for different directions. That's what I was pretty impressed by. And then the one we picked, and I did forward the class to my superintendent, so I can talk to him. Of course, the next month we don't meet at our standard board meeting at our home school. And I thought I appreciate that you sent this to us. And that's my feelings on it. That's the only reason I like this direction versus because of the staff at the festival thought it was more financially beneficial to all school districts.
Maybe there are reservations. I remember the notion of there's lots of people who want to come here, vast numbers of people who come here and study cosmetology, and that's great. Your question, what becomes of them? Didn't we have a sense that we're already flooding a non-market, or am I? You could play these things off
That was part of the presentation last month, correct?
And I understand that by adding cosmetology, we would add a strong female-centric program and get more, women and girls here. On the other side of things, one of the discussions was, you don't hear too often now, some people, I look at the ladies over there, when they try to schedule a hair appointment, they have to wait a couple weeks, but you don't hear too often, hey, we just can't get an electrician or can't get a cosmetologist. When you hear you can't get an electrician, you can't get a plumber, you
I
can't
hear
get.
that all the time, can't get a cosmetologist.
You hear that all the time?
All the time. Salon owner constantly saying, she can't have a Tony and Guy, anything, she's like, can't get anybody. They go to Tony and Guy, or they go to tech school, they get out and they go do something else.
Oh, they're gonna do something else, yeah,
Nobody wants to cut hair.
yeah, they're not staying
They're
in.
not staying in it. So that's what I was asking about, are they staying in the field? Do we waste that space for something that there's a need in the community around, it seems, but if people aren't gonna go into that field, what can we use that room for to help have people have good careers right out of tech versus going to college or somewhere else? And impact the community and have a good living wage, so that's all. Send me that presentation.
Yeah, would you send it to me too? I didn't see it either.
Sure.
Thank you.
Me as well.
All right. Yes, we're gonna send it to
We're
everybody.
finding out who wasn't here last month.
Yes.
Mike needs it too.
Yes. There we go. I'll send it to a board. We'll send that board. And then,
That's right, which folks over.
The attendance list is on there.
Yeah.
It's in the record, who's not here.
We can look at it right now.
pull that up, Mike, yeah, we can do that. And then you guys just feel free to give me a call and we can work through the discussion items as part of that program.
Just for clarification, so we don't run into the thing with the superintendents, this motion does what tonight? It says to approve the pursuit development, so when's the next time, is the next motion to hire somebody?
The next motion is to hire somebody.
So we're approving this, and as far as we're concerned, it's moving forward.
It's moving forward, it's going, and we start, so our timeline basically was to get it approved. We gotta go to PD, we gotta enter it in all their systems and get approval from them. Our timeline is to have our first OAC meeting in January. We already have letter of support from UPMC, Hammond Health Systems, because they need security people. We have 911 that we met with them, and Department of Public Safety, EMS, they're all for it. So we have letter of support from several state police gave us a letter of support. So we have that stakeholder buy-in. So we'll have the OAC meeting in January for our first one, and we have our second one later on. We're going to try to post and hire in the spring, so kind of get the posting out in March, hire in April, ideally bring that person on before the end of the school year for about 6 to 8 weeks, so that they can, get everything planned. The curriculum, the space, the setup, the orders, what we need to get done, and then all the different, softwares and credentials they have to be able to teach the things that they want to teach.
I think it was very similar when we started the sports medicine program.
Yes.
That was the most recent program that we had.
Yeah.
We brought her on, I think, March or April or
Sounds
something
right.
like that.
Yeah, and then she developed the curriculum, and then 6 months later.
One of the, in adding one program versus adding two programs, because I know last month we talked about that. One of the concerns brought up by a few of the superintendents was added cost to your budgets, because you're now sending an additional lump of, 6 or 10 or 12 students, and that tuition, is still there. That'll actually add, if you send 12 students, that's like just under $100,000 into your local budgets. And so when we looked at adding one program versus two programs during this timeline of this year, that was one of the concerns that was brought up to us, just so you guys are all well aware of how that will impact your local budgets.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered whether it was Cosmo or this class.
Right.
Correct.
Well, we talked about
You're
it too,
talking
once.
enrollment numbers going up, our costs going up because we have an extra instructor. We have,
So the year-over-year impact would have been much greater.
Yeah.
Send that many more people.
with two
Unless
programs,
it gives us a group discount or something.
Well, your pupil costs could actually go down
Well, that's fair.
because we're not adding another administrative person necessarily, things like that. So over time, it could, per pupil could drop, but not right away. And when you send more,
So the only thing that concerns me about this whole Cosmo versus this new class is 6 months ago, we all sat right here and voted unanimously to move forward with a Cosmo lab. Based on all the information the intel we had at that time, the only thing that was gonna stop us was a cost.
and I'd say that stopped us.
Well, it doesn't sound like that's what's stopping us.
I'll say I appreciated the new information. As you indicated, that was the information we had at that time. We saw the waiting list and the amount of people, and that was like, man, that was the big flashing red light that said that's why Cosmo is the way to go. However, but yeah, the new information, I appreciate
Another
it.
possibility, maybe we were wrong.
All 11 of us.
All of us.
Well, and I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I interpreted being new to that meeting, that we were approving to really get hard numbers and vet it out.
Agreed.
And that we weren't, it's done deal, we're moving forward, we're adding a second Cosmo.
I thought the opposite. I thought we were moving forward.
I thought we were, Matt said, I thought we were reviewing it still. I felt like, because and then we had, you remember we had the staff come in, voice their concern, we still voted that we want to process and see what the cost was. Because they did say they weren't really interested, we had you were at the meeting, and they said they weren't really interested in it.
And that was the union.
And I'm glad we pursued it, and I'm not, from what I'm hearing is, I don't think it's a dead idea.
No, I don't.
I think it's a, not next year, this is where we're going next year. That still is a possibility down the road that something would come of that.
Well, that's why I asked earlier if it was basically shot down to put the hold on it due to costs or the true reality of not needing another class in Cosmo.
Yes.
I mean, as far as wait list goes, yeah, to me it's cost. I mean, to me it's the contingency fund cost of $600 and some odd $1,000 going towards Cosmo.
Which we no longer have.
Which,
6 months ago, we did have.
it all depends on where Scope L comes in, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm very nervous about Scope L coming in with $300,000 worth of change orders.
I agree.
Versus $200,000 change order. They have over $100,000 of change order work done on this project. Their main project manager is no longer employed by Scope L. He retired / is no longer with the company, if you understand where I'm saying there. And that's where he was on site earlier this week trying to, I mean, there's probably gonna be a legal battle on their end to get the information from him, because he's the master keeper of all this change order information. And then their foreman on site just shakes his head and says, listen, I give it to him, I've been doing it, we've got the tickets, we've been doing it, so.
So we need to befriend that guy.
I give him candy every week at our meeting.
We're clearly gonna look at that change. Careful.
Put any auditor's name and you'll find it. You don't know about this.
Oh, geez.
So the question I have for you, clearly wasn't here at the last meeting, thanks, Sam. Do we have a form for how many students we expect year 1, 2, and 3 for this program? And how are we gonna evaluate success, and when do we determine if it's successful and we continue? When we did sports medicine, we had a rough, here's how many students we think are gonna get each year, here's where we know that we're gonna go continue. Because there's gotta be some.
So it's the exact same model, because that's a standard model for all of our programs. All of our programs can enroll 48 over a 3-year period. Ideally, that's 16, 16, and 16 in an ideal world, but it doesn't work that way. So when we start this program, we're looking for 20 students next year. Am I articulating that? Look at our 20 in year 1, 20 in year 2, that's 40 in the program. So then year 3 may not have as many seats, but you also have some kids that don't stay in the program, right? They come and they go back, and we have some, retention scenarios. So 20 year 1, 20 year 2, that's our goal. And then, by year 3, then we're up with 48, a full program.
With this kind of a program, is it possible that we could bring in some students as juniors or seniors?
Yeah, so they can still be, if they come in as a junior, we can still consider them a completer at the end of the senior year. As long as they have 2 years of a 3-year program, they'll be considered a completer. So in sports therapy, we have some students that have only been here 2 years, but they'll take the NOCTI test at the end of this year. They'll be completers in the program.
All of our programs are basically built and can be built off of that 2-year model. That's the goal, so that the 3rd year we're into co-op. To me, that's kind of the goal of our programs for the most part. Rough goal. Go ahead, Julie.
When it comes to interest, we have not identified any of our current students who could potentially be interested in making a change to protective services next year, nor have we reached out to the upperclassmen at the sending schools to see if any of them would like to come in as a junior or senior. That's on our radar to do later on this year, typically around semester time. But when it comes to 9th grade interest coming in for their 10th grade year, I looked at numbers a couple of days ago, and when I looked, we had 30 or 40 that were interested in the program as first choices only. I didn't even look at second and third choices.
So it's listed as a choice that they
It is listed as a
Just
choice, so
listed
that's
it.
the gate's interest level.
I was gonna ask, because our kids are coming
Yes.
in the next couple
So,
of weeks.
we made the decision after last meeting,
Yeah.
with meeting with the
That's a fair
superintendent
question.
October 6th, and meeting with you guys with that presentation, that we were comfortable saying, again, tentative, draft, right? I put that on a lot of my things that I put out to our admin team, so that we can edit it and go. We made the decision that in our recruiting presentations that Stacy Wellbridge is doing, our new enrollment coordinator, that we were rolling emergency protective services into that presentation.
That's great.
So it's on the menu.
It's on the menu, it's being talked about. When they come for visits, there's no lab to visit, so we're not having them when they come for their visits next week, visit emergency protective services, but we are going to talk to those kids that are interested in that and kind of give them a quick little 5-minute, here's what you're looking at, here's what, the program's gonna entail. We don't have it because it's gonna be brand new next year. And then on open house, we have our deputy, Yaney, who's our school resource officer. She's going to kind of set up a little station and when the kids come around looking, she's gonna talk about emergency protective services. And what you guys have attached in your agendas there, the grid and the descriptions and that kind of stuff, the task grid, that's what she'll have there as, it's not gonna be in a space where it's all set up, but it's gonna be where kids can get that information and discuss it and look at it, parents and whatnot, on open house.
On this, you're saying November 16th, are you talking that date, or are you talking a spring date?
November 16th.
Okay, you're talking November 16th.
Open house, 4:30 to 6:30.
Because I know 100% are aware of it. Once we have the open house, then, once the kids commit themselves, then we get a meet the teacher in the spring for the 9th graders also. And by then, we possibly could have the teacher already hired and the class base organized like we did for sports medicine. They would become in as a committed student and visit their teacher with their parents also. So this is the reason we're moving forward at this rate, because we did that in sports medicine, and I'm surprised transition went very well, and especially since our teacher actually, I think she was on maternity leave one time, I think already.
Yeah.
And so, and I haven't heard no complaints about that, because it went very well, so is that a goal, correct? Is that what we're shooting for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I didn't want to speak out of turn.
No, those are all good points. And the meet the teacher is, that's like May-ish. So, that hiring timeline that we put out there of March, April.
Classroom room and everything.
Yeah. Warren County and Warren County and Venango County both have emergency protective services program. And we got their contact number of their teachers to go visit and learn what, when you see a lab set up, then okay, we're looking at an idea of, okay, we need these things and these things and these tables and, the classroom space, tables and chairs, yeah, that's an easy thing to set up. But then the lab space, what that looks like is what we'll steal ideas from.
You're not gonna ask us for a garage and a fire apparatus, right?
That's nice.
A garage and a fire apparatus?
So I'm looking at the curriculum, I'm sitting here thinking, we're gonna partner with Perry Hose Company?
We can
Oh,
borrow.
yes.
We can go.
We're gonna borrow.
Yeah, we're fine with, yeah, and we've already talked to Perry Fire Hose Company, and
Well, it
they were
seems
excited
like this
as
property
well.
has some kind of a fire thing, right, Del? Some kind of a fire tower or something? Did we do some training?
We used to do one on this property.
Right. Thought so. We don't have to go too far.
We'll figure out something.
Any other questions about this? Good discussion, that's what I wanted to ask the, so this is moving forward,
Yes.
once we vote on it tonight.
We kind of just voted on the curriculum right now.
Well, yes, we had ideas last month.
We have to follow.
This is formal.
And so then you have financial items. Was there a question on one of the ones in the financial items there?
No,
I think his question was on personnel.
Yes, if you look at, did we hire somebody, you hired somebody now, we released them?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't
Yes.
just reading that, okay.
Person resigned after one day.
Yes, that's what I read. We have a resignation to hire somebody, then we have a raise. I see we're accepting the resignation, but D, we're hiring.
Yes. One day.
Very part-time. Right, very part-time.
Okay, I did.
It was an instructional aid.
Yeah, I understand, I read what it was, but I just want to make sure I wasn't, somebody had the same name in two locations.
Yes.
Okay, that
And
wasn't.
because they earned a paycheck for one day, we gotta do
Okay,
both.
okay, yes, I understand. Well, we accept the resignation before we hire them.
Okay? Director's report is in there. I don't know if you want to pull it up at this point.
I looked at that and I couldn't hardly say it.
Is there anything else on any of the agenda items, looking through there?
So, Kat, what, with these new hires that obviously got some support stuff, but what instructors are we still missing? Just transition center. Okay, thank you.
Which we are interviewing on Tuesday.
You've been staying busy.
We're keeping, we're trying. Director's report, the new program discussion, we kind of already talked about. There's a little note in there about that. We had our advisory committee meetings on October 9th. Very, very successful. We actually had all the Erie High School CTE teachers, not all of them, but then in mass, most of them here, which was nice. A little change of pace there. We are going under a Perkins review for compliance monitoring. They're going to be on site in January for 3 days. We had our initial meeting this week, and we'll have all kinds of more stuff to do with that. We have a couple grants that we submitted. The supplemental equipment grant, the details there, I submitted for $124,000. We won't probably get that, but I played dumb and asked for more money than what they'll give us. We'll see what happens. We also applied for the Pennsylvania Agricultural and Youth Grant. It was a matching grant of $25,000, so a total of $50,000, where it's kits, materials, and tools for putting greenhouses in. And so this was a project that I guess we as an admin team talked about with our transition center. It's kind of like rowing the boat together of all of our programs. Construction, building, facility maintenance, maintaining, electrical, doing solar panels for electric light, ventilation, heat, TRC growing items and selling items, and then culinary cooking it. So we'll see if we get that grant. The $25,000 match, that's wood and tools and stuff to build it, which we buy wood and tools and stuff every single year. So it's a match of stuff that we're already buying, right? We buy drills every single year for construction trade. While we're buying that drill, we're going to show that that's a match for that grant. So if we're worried about that matching side of things, there'll be some investment that we probably wouldn't have done of $5,000 or maybe $8,000, because for the most part, we're already going to buy wood and materials and stuff like that for our kids to build things and tools. So that's where that comes into play. I want to talk about substitute teacher rates. Those are our current rates. From what I understand, we've really never brought rates for approval to the board level. Is that something we do annually? I've been told it hasn't been done.
Not annually. I'm trying to remember if
I thought we bumped them during COVID.
Was
Oh,
that,
we did our
was that a
homeschool
line item and an approval?
I thought we did it here too.
Okay.
And it was approved at here. So, our current rates, basically, we use are 125, 150. There's been a specialty rate that's been used in the past as well for a long-term skilled trade situation of 225 a day. And of course, the long-term stuff that's over 91 days, then by school code, gets step one of the contract. And that's something that, you know, is kind of where our current situation is. We've been using some aids, a lot of aids actually, to fill the void of what we have going on with combination of our admin team covering, like Mike's doing computer networking with one of our aides that's actually in school to be a teacher. And then Lisa is manning the transition center with one of our aides who was a former teacher at Crawford County VOTEC. And so when we looked at our aides subbing and what they're currently making right around $125 for 6 hours of work based on our current step of the contract. So there's no like anticipation or no true bump for them to be the teacher of record for the day versus being the aide for the day and take on that added responsibility. And so that's where we're proposing to take our in-house people and reward them when they step up to fill in as a sub an extra $25 a day and use that 125-day rate for them on day-to-day subbing. And then $175 a day if they're the long-term. What's the difference between long-term? They're the teacher of record. They're taking attendance, they're entering grades, they're helping with plans, they're doing everything that's as if they are the teacher for the period of time that we're trying to find somebody and hire. We currently have one of our aides that's doing that in auto tech, you know, until we can get that person hired. Luckily, she's only gonna end up doing it for about 8 days or 10 days before we get the teacher in there.
So that extra pay is justified because they're having to do some planning and some of those other things that if they just come in for a day, teacher's off. We do something similar to that with some of our teachers that have to do.
So our current aides get paid a healthy aid, like hourly rate, because they're all part-time and they don't get benefits. So that, you know, the hourly rate is a little bit more healthy because of that. So when they're 6 hour day, they're making $125. So to pay them the sub rate of $125, they're looking at us like, well, for some of us, that's a pay cut that's been here a while. So that's why we're looking to go $150 a day for our aides that are being a substitute teacher on a day-to-day basis, and then $175. Now, those are all rates that we've used here in the past, and I don't know, I mean, I was told that you guys, when I asked around, that there wasn't like an approval on a yearly basis of our sub rates, but maybe I'm wrong on that you did approve it when you went up over.
I thought we increased them.
You did.
To attract.
You did, but I don't know if it was a line item of approval.
I'll bet it was through Kelly. Because
It was through Kelly.
substitutes for Kelly, we bumped that up because that's a flat rate and then they cover taxes and all that. These are in-house people. So I'll bet that's the difference. We probably haven't done this.
And that's our rate for Kelly as well. We use 125 and 150 for Kelly services. And we have used higher rates when we couldn't get somebody at 175 and 225 through Kelly as well, when the person kind of said, no, I'm not coming in, or like, we need an auto person for a long term.
Are we getting filled with Kelly if we're using in-house?
Everybody's short on subs.
No, but we were using Kelly, and I'm curious because I think a lot of us switched. We're not using Kelly anymore. There's another, and I don't remember their name.
ESS. How many districts here are now using ESS? ESS is what we used at the IU where I came from before. And we're probably not gonna stay with Kelly. I mean, that's something that we're in a debate about moving forward, but at the end of this year, I mean, we'll probably make that decision in the wintertime to then say, hey, we're not.
We just couldn't get filled with Kelly, and they were changing some of their management, it just wasn't working, so.
That's how we feel as well.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot better. That's kind of what we're hearing. It's not perfect, but
I think the majority of districts are changing.
But they're all short too, right? Like, I mean, the subs just aren't out there that they were before in education. I mean, there was a sub shortage before COVID, and it just got, you know, worse over COVID, so.
So is everybody okay with the moving the pay rate? Do we just need to
We probably
somehow
should approve that rate,
that
so
is
it's, because that's the rate you're paying someone, so if we're changing the rate, then I think we should probably have a resolution to that effect.
Okay.
Approve that.
So we'll bring that to you next meeting to approve that rate. And we will, if it's okay, backdate it to November 1st, so that, you know, we can kind of say, hey, it was received favorably.
We won't be voting till 16th though.
Yeah, can we, let's just do it tonight, we can add that, can't
We
we?
could do it under an amendment, we have an emergency situation, we just review that.
That's gonna be easier for payroll and everything, because, yeah, we're not talking together till the end.
16th of next month,
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah, December, so, okay.
And the bump's just for teachers' aides being used as substitute.
Yeah, our rates with Kelly are still 125, 150. And, I mean, those other rates that they have used, the 175, 225, that was always kind of a decision Joe used when we were desperate for people. And Mr. Tarasovich, I guess, used that at times.
I'm fine with
Different
leaving
situations.
it up to you, the rate would be that, except when,
Yeah, it's 125 a day for Kelly services. It's 150 a day through Kelly for a long-term situation. With our interior people only, we'll do the day-to-day substitute at 150 a day, and then the long-term rate at 175 a day.
we can just encapsulate that as to take the director's recommendations.
Approval on the substitute rates that got recommended by the attorney.
And then in future years, we'll bring that to you annually as a reminder, just so that you have it. Here's our rates at the start of school year. That's how we always did it in places I've listened to past. So,
If we do that as 10E is everything, so we want to just do an F and do that as a separate motion because it's added on. Do 10F will be the new substitute rates.
for our in-house people. It's only for in-house people.
Okay.
We kicked off Struggles of Strength, information's in there, and that's just our mental health and SEL programming. We continue in year 2 with a grant through PCCD. We also kicked off a student chapter of the Home Builders Association. We've never had a chapter before. Michelle Bagnoni presented to our students last week. They are sponsoring and paying for everything for our chapter, so it'll just be an added value to our kids for resume building and possible leadership positions within that chapter and so forth. Student Spotlight, we just kind of highlighted our cybersecurity competitors. They competed on Friday, staying after school into the evening. They have more competitions that are going through our computer and networking program with teacher Mr. Quinn's. And open house information's there. It's Thursday, November 16th from 4:30 to 6:30. And then some of the updates from our renovations, a few things, notes in there about the technology wing and some pictures from our clerical works of different areas that are getting completed.
Is he up to speed and feeling?
He has been very helpful. He is up to speed and he has been making phone calls and doing a good job to answer contractor questions with engineers and architects, getting designs and getting things, information back, which has been very helpful. So, okay. With that, that's everything we have. Executive session would just be to talk about the personnel.
So nothing other than what's on the agenda, so we're good.
And we are now attaching the resumes in there for you guys to review whenever we hire somebody, so that'd be what we would discuss in the executive session. So if anybody wants an executive session, we can have it, but if we don't really have anything with the personnel. Let's keep it rolling then. Do we, ready to call the meeting to order and go?
Very good, we don't need a break? Keep going. All right, well, let me use this thing. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Please join me for a moment of reflection.
Okay, so Becky's playing.
As Mike gets a flag right now. All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a change order with a flag for next month.
Well, we're supposed to be moving, we can probably find the flag, we got before, if they can find it.
$144,000.
No,
New district appointment committee member. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to welcome Jeremy on board here. Now you'll be official. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. You didn't say no. Roll call.
Mr. McManus.
Present.
Mr. Gordon.
Present.
Dr. Wise.
Present.
Ms. Rosanna.
here,
Ms. Brink. Mr. Koblenz. How do you say your last name? Koblenz. Mr. Lindner.
Here.
Mr. Boyd.
Here.
Mr. Rainey.
Here.
Mr. Gilbert.
Here.
Mr. Morvay.
Here.
Very good. Takes us to, we did not have an executive session, and we do have a amendment to the 6, so we're gonna have that 10F, I think.
Adding a motion in regard to substitute rates for in-house teachers and aides as recommended by the executive director.
Call that 10F, so we're gonna vote.
You're just voting, you need a
Accept
motion
the amendment.
to add to the agenda.
Somebody like to move that?
Motion.
second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting minutes. Somebody like to move that?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Those of you not here last month can take time and read it later. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. It was lonely last month. We were on a little table in front.
No, we had all the parents and students, luckily we weren't that crowded, because we couldn't fit in here.
That's right. Student accomplishments.
See, you used the word deadbeats, I think.
No, come on, don't get me in trouble. Student accomplishments highlights.
So Calvin Smith won the Pat Locko Scholarship, was recognizing at Manufacturing Day. There's a nice picture of him, that was the one we
Yeah,
put in here. Yeah. He's a very nice young man in precision machining.
Guest and public comment, anybody like to address the board? Now left. Important items coming to ECTS, got 3 of them.
We just put some dates and times in there for you guys to be aware of. Our NT8HS induction ceremony is November 1st. That's held over at Perry Highway Host Company this year at 6:30. We're doing a Walk for Wishes event this weekend, or this Friday with our students, and November 16th are open house.
Operations number 8, new business, we got some, we got a field trip there, or field trips. And then this is where our renovation change order, the revised change order, then Perry's retention reduction, the lease agreement. We need to word that differently or whatever, or just, what are we gonna put? Just that, gonna approve it per the changes that the solicitor and director.
By the executive director.
Okay, there you go. Jessica has all that.
Per the changes of what?
As recommended by the executive director.
So that is all under E for approval, operations section. If somebody would like to move all that.
Okay, so
Second.
Moved and seconded. Just pick somebody. Did you get that?
Either Dennis F. or Corey.
Any discussion on any of those items? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
There's what, 10 of us, so it carries 9-1, right? Make me add.
I'm glad we did, I comment, I'm glad we did put them on the whips and lower the rate from what it originally was.
Right, that was a nice move. Then we've got F, which is the new program, Emergency and Protective Services, a separate motion. Someone like to move that?
I get down to last week.
Moved and seconded, in discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Financial items, number 9. Something you'd like to point out for us?
I don't have I wanted to apologize because I didn't get a chance to generate the treasurer's report due to us being short-staffed in the business office. I couldn't get that report going, but I will have that for you to sign, Lorraine, in the next meeting you'll have to sign.
Unless you need to email it to me and send it, or does it have to happen at the board meeting? So I just don't know procedure-wise for you.
I believe it needs to be right?
You need to approve it
It needs to be
before you sign it.
approved
Ah, fair
before it gets signed, so yeah, I'll
So
have
we'll
it on
sit
the
tight.
next.
So what we've got the checklist, because I looked at that, that's all there, so that's what we're approving tonight, is to keep the money flowing and all that. Anything else you want to point out?
We would approve everything but the treasurer's report, because the treasurer's report is not included.
So we just make a note, just saying
So
that everything get approved but B,
everything, the motion would be everything but B.
okay.
A, C, D.
I'll move that.
Do we have a table of the treasurer report or no?
We're just taking it out.
Oh, okay, we're taking it out.
So we got a motion on that,
Second.
and a second. Again, everything in this section except for B. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Administrative Services and Human Resources, 10. We've got the, we don't have any new policies, right? So we've got the resignation, and then we're gonna hire the person that just resigned, as Dennis so pointed out, so we make it all as one motion. And then you've got the hirings there, and we've got the 10F, which is the new sub-rates for in-house employees that we added to the agenda. So this will, are we gonna do that in a separate motion? If you're okay, let's include it all in the approval. We good with that? Someone like to move that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, any of that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Now, for our superintendent's report.
I have no formal reports.
All right. We did have you talk earlier, so that's good. And nothing further.
Always open to questions.
Do we have any
I
questions?
have a question. So why did they, at the superintendent meeting, I think it was you that said they talked about, they were reluctant about more students coming to tech.
That was me that mentioned that.
Oh, they knew somebody.
Yes.
So that was talked about at the superintendent's meeting, that they didn't want more students to come.
Well, they were
Because of the
worrisome
cost.
about the increase in budget on their local budget on the tech line item, basically. by more
In one
students
year.
coming here.
In 1 year.
Because
No.
it was two.
Are you familiar
If we did two programs,
If it's two, it'd be
Yeah,
too much
I'm
of a
surprised
burden,
too
too
much.
immediate burden.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
one
I'm
calendar
surprised.
year,
Essentially,
you could plan
Yes.
ahead for that and divvy up where the money can go down, or come.
Yeah,
I'm just surprised they wouldn't want to send kids to tech.
They do want to send kids to tech.
Okay.
That's not the
It's the issue with
problem.
budgets.
The issue is there will be a bubble
Correct.
that would then, change kind of their yearly process and add strain to the local budget. And that's
The way that it's done, you wouldn't see that effect for, what, a year, 2 years?
That would be this
We're
year.
preparing 24-25 budget right now.
You would see that right away because there's a 3-year average to set the rate because you divide it over the 3-year average. But still, if you're sending more students, that's gonna start bubbling that up right away.
That's a sunk cost.
Yeah, if you take a new program and do that for 2 years, you're gonna take that bubble and kind of just gradually make it go up. So I can understand that.
That's why they have reserves.
There you go.
They make other operational changes to their operating structure as students come in and out, depending on what learning agency they attend. We also reduce the overall cost per student as we increase the enrollment of this operation, because the fixed cost is still set as we get closer to 100% fully occupied.
We're actually changing 100% different. We're adding a program, actually 100% actually could be less. I mean, more people, or a percentage could be less enrollment.
That's why I said your per pupil cost will go down as you go up. It should if we increase, but. Any more questions? No, sorry. Solicitors report.
No report, thank you.
That's what I was hoping. Principals report.
The only thing that I wanted to highlight is Matt mentioned our NTHS induction ceremony next week. After next week, we're gonna have a total of 47 members, which is the highest enrollment that we've had at one time, which is very, very exciting. At that point, we will have all of our districts represented and 15 out of 18 of our programs represented. So I thought that was pretty cool to share with you.
Will there be cookies?
Oh, yes.
All right. Is there make a motion there, right? No. So we got supplemental reports. Anything anybody needs to point out for the good of the order?
Sam, I just want to thank Matt for coming to our home meeting last month. And all of our board members got the meeting. It's much appreciated. Thank you for taking the time.
How many have you been out to? You made it to Northwestern too.
Fort LaBeouf. General McLean, Fort LaBeouf, was the ones that gave me the invite. So I went to Girard for one of their admin meetings and met their whole admin team. Talked with them.
I want to play one-upmanship, but he moved into my district.
I think you brought this up last.
We like that no matter what. This is actually, this one is the closest, so he can get here on his bicycle if he needs to.
Very good. Anything else? Then I will say happy Thanksgiving. If everything goes well, we won't see each other next month. So we'll be here just the week before Christmas, the next.
Motion to adjourn.
We'll hopefully see you all.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second, all those in favor, signify by leaving. Thank you.
I'm glad I saw this
Can you make all the professionals Like, hey, we just want to let you know that this team did a really good